Hello and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight we are joined by Natasha Hughes Smith. Welcome to the room, Natasha. How are you this evening?
I am great, and thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I believe it'll be a lot of fun. Let me start my timer. We start my timer. We do a 20-minute podcast. It goes pretty quick. It kind of makes you wanting for more, and that's the way I like it. So, a podcaster. You're a podcaster as well. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I'm primarily an author, but my podcast, I like to talk about obviously my own books. I like to interview other authors. Sometimes I might talk about movies. So it's just little short conversations, and I give updates to my readers on what may be coming up for me as far as releases or community outings.
Nice. So when about did you start your podcast?
I started it in 2021, in the fall of 2021. At that point, I was publishing my second novel, and I thought it would be another avenue to try to, get more readers, to get more people interested in what I was doing.
Right. I understand that. Um, it's a very nice way to be able to interact with a lot of other authors. I see that as well. I mean, we happen to do that here. Um, so with your story based on a dream you had 15 years ago, tell me when you started to truly think of yourself as a writer.
Probably after I actually published that first novel. I've always enjoyed storytelling, be it, in the oral tradition as well as writing.
Mhm.
And at the time in 2008, when I initially began Reflections, I was at a crossroads trying to find some connection, some sense of purpose or success. I was laid off, and so I always have very vivid dreams, and the very basic premise of Reflections is based on a dream I had one night.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So, as a thriller romance author, take us on how about modeling your characters comes about.
Well, I don't follow, at least I don't believe I follow um, I try to make my characters realistic. Some of the issues that the characters deal with are things I've seen other people deal with. Some of the characters have a small aspect of something I might have been experiencing at the time that I started writing a story or in the past. So I really try to make the characters realistic, where someone and relatable, where somebody could relate to the characters and either see themselves or someone they know. But of course, my characters, because it is suspenseful, romance thrillers, they are making some dramatic, making some dramatic choices that the average person probably wouldn't make. But
Right.
their feelings and the things that they're reacting to are things that a lot of us experience.
Yeah. So, first question that comes to my mind. Does any of your friends or your connections say, "Hey, that's me in that book"?
No, fortunately not. And
Okay.
right now, it's probably a little bit of me in a
Right.
lot of the characters, more so than anybody else. Um, but I just want the character to be relatable. I want it to be real. I want the characters to be smart. I don't want a reader to read the story and say, well, that was done. Why didn't they do X, Y, and Z? I want it to be very thoughtful in what I have the characters do. Um,
Mhm. Right. I can understand that. I find sometimes when I'm writing, like if I write any bit of action, I'll find myself moving with it and try to figure out, okay, how would I actually do this? You find yourself doing that as well?
Yeah, I think it's good to think of, what you would do in a situation. Otherwise, you're just writing, everything is just writing to get the end result that you want to get to. You need to think of, okay, well, what if they counteract this way, and think of something smart that the character would have to do to counteract that action. And I think that's when you have more realistic scenes or dialogue, not just trying to move the story to a certain along a certain plot or to a certain ending.
Right.
If that
So
makes
let
sense.
oh yeah, it makes sense. I fully understand what you're talking about. So now correct me if I'm getting this pronunciation wrong. Is it beyond Bianchi or Bianchi? Is it Bianchi?
I had to look it up. It's a rarely used Italian name because I didn't want to use a typical Italian name. It's Bianchi.
Bianchi. Okay. All right. So let me put that a little bit out there on top so I don't misdo it again. So Bianchi, the Reflection series. Let's talk the most difficult. What is the most difficult thing you found about writing this series?
Um, well, I thought I had a good book, a good story with reflections, and I just wanted the second one, which is Wealth of Lies, to be just as good or better.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that the pressure can be the toughest thing to get through.
Oh
So when
yeah.
I
Oh
wrote
yeah.
Wealth of Lies, I thought, oh wow, when the a voice actor was doing the scenes and I was listening to the playback, I thought, wow, did I write that? So so when I said on Bianchi, it was even I felt it was even more pressure, and I had to try to calm myself and just focus on the story and not, like that sophomore issue where you're trying to beat the previous work.
Yeah.
I just wanted all the stories to be as good or better than the previous one.
Right.
And I have to remind myself that currently, as I'm working on the fourth and final piece of the series, it's just to focus on telling a good story and
Right.
not think about what, the readers they want follow up on this character, that character, and I can't be tied to that. I have to focus on the story that I want to tell
Mm-hmm.
and just get that story out there.
Right.
Uh,
I I do audibles as well. I have a little bit of a studio here, so I do my own recordings. And I
oh,
know what you're. Oh well, thank you. Um, I know what you're saying about listening to yours. I mean, listening to the book after. You have it. You're lucky to have an actor do it. So when I'm reading, I submerge myself in trying to get the emotions and everything like that. But then I go back and I re-listen to what I've did. Holy crap, I wrote that.
right.
So I fully understand what you're saying. I'm like, I'm a mad genius.
Exactly.
so,
So I'm not
so I
alone. I'm not
right, I
alone. We have
fully
two geniuses
yeah,
here.
you're not alone. I mean, and I guess that's proud. And I think the best way you can write a book is write something that you yourself want to read. And I think that's the best way to do it because then you enjoy it so much better.
Yes,
Um,
and that way it
I,
doesn't become work.
no,
It should be fun.
right. I always try to save the endings as I'm writing them. So for me, it's like, oh yeah, well, now what happens? So
Mhm.
it's like a new book every time.
Right.
So as we talk about, I'm going to try it again, Bianchi. Am I saying
Hmm.
right? Okay, cool.
Yes.
As we talk about Bianchi, the Reflection series, tell us about the premise of the series for those who aren't familiar with your work.
Well, the first one is reflections, and it basically just looks at what are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want. And that theme kind of flows into the next one, which is Wealth of Lies. Bianchi is represents the mob family that's mentioned throughout the series, and I fell in love with the character when I wrote about him in Wealth of Lies, and so I thought, well, let's give him his own story. 15 years later, a mature man, 40, taking over the family business, and he had gotten tired of the playboy ways. He's the only one in his little crew who's not married and settled down. And so he's starting to really think about what he wants out of life, the legacy he wants to leave behind. And he's at a crossroads trying to maintain the power of the mob that has been established as Detroit, his world changes. And so basically, that's where he is, and he meets a young woman, Victoria, who, for her reasons of her own, she's just decided that she's just settle into a simple life of being the daughter of a meat market owner, and that's going to be her world, her life, and until she meets Ricky Bianchi and discovers there's so much more to life than just slicing meat.
Mm.
So so it's just all of the series is based on love. Um, I feel like love is so important. We all need touch. We all need love, and then everything else is happens as a result of those love affairs. So the romance, I say, is the catalyst. It gets everything going. All the action, the drama, it's all based on these people trying to maintain this love that they found, or this love that they want to have.
Hmm. That's an interesting premise. Everything is based on love, and as of that love, everything else results from that. Can you give me an example?
From the story,
Yes.
without giving away too much, and Wealth of Lies, Josephine falls in love with the patriarch Bernard Barrington, which is the family that flows and is mentioned throughout the series. And she's a young woman trying to get from under the thumb of her mother. And when she falls in love with Bernard and realizes the world that he has at his disposal that he can give to her, she's willing to give it up. Her past, everything that she has held dear, she's willing to sacrifice it. And so, as that story unfolds, you realize just how great the sacrifice is, um, and you realize that his family has also made some sacrifices. And the title Wealth Lies came to me because, in reflections, John Barrington, who is the son of Bernard Barrington, says that their family's wealth is built on a foundation of lies. And so, as I finished writing Reflections and started writing the prequel, which takes place in 1955, by the way, Wealth of Lies, I started thinking, well, what could those lies be? And so that's when I came up with the title Wealth of Lies.
Ah, I got you. I'm looking at your covers. Tell me about that. Where does the cover work stem from?
Well, sometimes you have an image in your head, and you can't
Hmm.
quite, if you're not working on it yourself, you can't quite communicate it. So Reflections is not the cover that I had envisioned.
Hmm.
Um, what I had envisioned probably would look like a psychological thriller more than anything. So I've learned as I worked on the second and third book that the cover is so very important, because a lot of people look at Reflections and they think it's like self-help book because they see a woman reflecting in the mirror, but it's all symbolic, because at the
Hmm.
beginning of the story, she's reflecting in the mirror and she's thinking back on all the choices and the things that happened and how she landed at that particular point in her life. Um, and so with Wealth of Lies, I had a lot of hit or misses. I, had a different name for the book entirely when I first started. Um, and so after I didn't quite like what the graphic designer had pulled together. Again, he was using the information I gave him. I just
Hmm.
told him, pull this, take this out, take that out, and all was left was this house. So I said, let's kind of have it a little dark where you really can't see it fully, and that, to be representative of, symbolic of the lies that are hidden.
Right.
And then with Bianchi, I thought maybe I'd go a little bit more traditional and, have a sexy guy on the cover.
Hmm.
And so it's a little bit more, I think, traditional. But because he is a mob boss, I thought, you know what, let's add a piece, a torn piece of a newspaper on there. He's hot. This is hot off the press. What we're reading about Bianchi. So
Hmm.
I'm learning as an independent author, new author, the importance of the cover, the importance of getting some feedback, because I did get some feedback with the second and third versus the first. The first, I just went forward. So if I, did it all over again, I would make some changes to the first. But it is what it is, and we learn as we go.
Right. So tell me about your work with Gail Washington and Kennedy Rockefeller.
Um, I use ACX. For those who don't know, it's the behind the scenes piece of Audible, and I found those two great voices.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I first did reflections in the Audible, I didn't know how to market and didn't market it well. So I was at
Mm,
a point where I haven't really sold enough to even invest into doing another book in Audible. But then I thought, well, I don't want it to be not balanced. If it's available in audio for reflections, it should be available in the rest.
right.
So I found a great voice who would be, interested in doing like a royalty share with me. And I thought, there's no way in heck that this woman is going to agree to doing this because her voice is so incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know, but she had already made a decision that she was going to do so many royalty shares to get it going because she was just getting into doing audiobooks. She's a trained actor, but
Mm-hmm.
she was just getting into doing audiobooks. And I didn't know that, but she agreed to the project. We hit it off. Our personalities hit it off. She doesn't read. She acts out every word where you feel the emotion behind the words. And fortunately, she was available to do Bianchi as well. And I'm hoping that she'll be able to do the final installment when that's released. So it's been a great partnership. Marketing, Wealth Lies, and Bianchi. And I'm very appreciative to meeting her. It was definitely ordained that we met at the time that we did.
That's awesome. My apologies if you hear my dogs in the background. One just shot out of the sound booth. So apparently something's outside worth barking at. So my
Right.
apologies if you heard that. um, I know if we're very rural here, we keep it real. We keep it real in this sound booth. um, so talk to me about your writing process, especially writing for audibles. Tell me about how that works for you. Do you since you've already done an audible, let me just ask you this. Do you see it differently now when you write? Do you envision how it's going to come out in that version as well?
No, I don't actually. I keep it real simple. I'm not one to try to act like I'm, got the perfect recipe or perfect method of doing anything. I just keep it simple. I focus on
Mm-hmm.
the story. I have my little outlines that I do before I start writing. I try to think about the characters. Sometimes I add characters later, but think about the characters, their personalities. Write my outline, and I don't necessarily stick to the outline 100% because inspiration occurs and you think of an idea, and then I take notes on that and then plug it into where it best fits into the outline and go from there. So I really don't write and with that in mind, I'm just trying to focus on writing the best story that I can, that's concise, clear, enjoyable, um, and that has an end product that no one expects. I don't want anybody to expect the ending. I'm on this suspenseful thriller, romance thriller ride, and that's where my focus is, giving people plot twists, unexpected endings, and shocking
Right.
events.
Yeah, I can understand that. Um, so tell me, I got like 1 minute on the clock. I am going to stop that because that will go off like you will not believe. So let me put a pause on that. If we go over a little bit, it's fine. So tell me what's next for 2023. What's coming next for this year?
What's coming next is
Uh huh.
the fourth installment of the Reflection series. I have not released the name yet. Um, and that is about Shannon. For those who don't know, I need to, before I really answer that question, let me say this. Reflections starts off in present day. Wealth of Lies goes back to 1955, Bianchi in 1970, and then the fourth one will come back to present day. And so readers will read about some familiar people from Reflections, the first novel, where Shannon was introduced. She's the best friend of Vivian, who was the main character in Reflections. So now Shannon gets her story told and finally, hopefully, finds love after years of heartbreak from various love interests. So that's
Mm.
my focus, is to get that completed, published, and just be more in the community and do some meet and greets and get moving on to the next novel, which will be a standalone.
Nice. I want to thank you so much, Natasha, for speaking with us tonight. It's been very entertaining listening to you. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. For our listeners, before we sign off tonight, I'd like to take a minute and tell you about Amazon deals. Today's deal is a Shark AI Ultra 2-in-1 robot vacuum and mop, sonic mopping, matrix clean, home mapping, HEPA, bagless, self-based CleanEdge technology for pet hair, Wi-Fi, works with Alexa, black gold, and it's available with suction and sonic mopping. It's no spot mitts, empty itself. It tackles on your stain. And guess what, guys? As you heard all my dogs, it is great for pet owners. Currently, it is 43% off. It used to be $699 and it's $399. I'll make sure the links are in all the bios for the podcast tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and listening to us. You make my night, you make my week, you make my freaking month every time I listen, and you guys are here with me. So thank you so much. Until next time, bye bye for now.